Hey there, friends. It's Laurie. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today, I'm making 3 Christmas holiday DIYs. I'm using mostly Dollar Tree supplies, but adding in a few things that I had on hand. I really hope you enjoy them, so let's get busy. I'm starting this DIY by using a block of wood that I found in my kindling bin. It originally was headed for the wood stove, but I'm going to turn it into a reindeer instead. It measures about 7 inches in height and 3.5 inches in width. It's not in the best condition, it's a little banged up, and it has some rough spots, so I'm going to use this Dollar Tree sanding block and kind of clean it up just a bit. Now that pretty much most of the edges are smooth, I'm going to use some of the Dollar Tree brown acrylic paint and give it a complete coat. While that's aside and drying, I looked through my large bag full of wooden beads and knobs and all types of odds and ends, and I found this. I think it was a wooden knob that was cut in half. I'm going to use this for my reindeer's nose, but there are all types of different things you can use. You could always use one of the Dollar Tree cut wood pieces or one of their ping pong balls, and if you had a wooden pole on hand, that would work great too. Now that I have the reindeer's nose picked out, I'm going to paint it with this pretty red acrylic paint. Now that both of the pieces are dry, it's time to add on some accents. I'm giving my reindeer some really simple eyes, so I decided where I wanted the nose to be and turned the block of wood around. I used my pencil and then drew 2 ovals for the eyes. With those all set, I'm now using some of the Dollar Tree black acrylic paint and I'm filling them in. With the eyes dry, I'm adding on 2 little white dots using some white acrylic paint. I'm using the ends of 2 different paintbrushes, and one is just a little bit bigger than the other. I dipped the larger into my white paint and then added a dot to each eye. Then using the smaller end of the other paintbrush, I dipped that in the paint and made a smaller dot under the other 2. I then used a thinner paintbrush, and using my black acrylic paint, I gave her eyes 3 lashes. For her nose, I'm back to using my white paint, and I'm just adding on a very tiny curve. I finished off the curve by adding 2 dots of white on each end, and then I added 2 additional dots underneath it. To attach the 2 pieces together, I'm using my E6000. I'm adding some to the bottom of the knob and then attaching it under the eyes. Now that it's dry, I'm giving it a complete coat of Mod Podge. This step is completely optional. I just wanted to give mine a little bit of a sheen, and I am using the satin Mod Podge. To add on the antlers, I went out into my yard and clipped off a couple of twigs from a bush. I shortened up the ends so that they would fit onto my deer, and then using my hot glue, I just attached them in place. With my reindeer dry, I'm going to make it a little tuft of hair, and I'm using some of the jute from the Dollar Tree. I'm making about 8 or 9 figure 8s with some 6-inch jute. When I'm done, I then cut the jute free from the roll. I wrapped it around the center of my bunch and then just made a couple of knots to hold it together. I then used my scissors to cut off the loops so that all the ends were hanging free. Now that I'm done, I have this little tuft of hair, and to add it, I'm placing some hot glue in between the antlers and then just attaching it in place. To finish up, I'm giving my deer a bow, and I'm using some of this 2.5-inch Christmas wired ribbon that I had on hand. I'm cutting a piece about 10 inches in length. I folded the ribbon in half to find the center, and then folded both ends in, and then using my glue gun, I hot glued them into place. I cut another piece of ribbon at about 3 inches. I then folded the striped sides in and attached them with my glue gun. I then pinched the middle of my ribbon together, wrapped around the polka dot short ribbon, and attached it in the back. When I was done, I opened up the loops, and then using my glue gun, I attached it over the hair. And now that I'm done, this recycled cutie is ready for the holidays. I wanted to share with you today that I am participating in my monthly friend collab group, and it's being hosted by my sweet friend Liana from Liana DIY. We have 3 guest hosts this month: Annie from Indie Annie Jones, Megan from The Crafty Quinn, and Kathy from Crafty Kathy. All 4 women have amazing channels, and you can check them out along with my other crafty friends by clicking on the Christmas in July playlist that I'll have linked below in my description. If this is your first time visiting my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below. And if you're one of my returning friends, you know I'm always so happy to see you. To start my Santa, I'm using one of these signs that I had picked up at the Dollar Tree. I'm working on the back, so I turned the sign over. Using my pencil, I'm drawing a U shape on the sign, and this is where Santa's face will be. I'm painting mine with some coral acrylic paint, and I'm just kind of using my outline as the guide. Once that has dried, I'm now using my white acrylic paint, and I'm painting on the sides and on the bottom of the sign. I'll be adding Santa's beard on this part, and you don't have to be super fussy when you're painting, because honestly the majority of the paint will be covered up, except for a small part where Santa's face will kind of shine through. I'm making Santa's beard out of some loopy ribbon, and I found 6 spools of these 1-inch ribbons at a discount store, and they were 2 for $1. Each roll had 3 yards, and to start attaching them, I'm just adding some hot glue about halfway down on Santa's face. Once the first end is attached, I'm then making about a 5-inch loop and attaching that with my glue gun as well. From there, I'm going to make about 4 more 5-inch loops. Once those are attached in place, I'm then making 3 about 6 inches or so loops and adding those on as well with my glue gun. As I'm adding them, I'm trying to keep the top as straight and as neat as possible. But if you're a little off here and there, it won't matter because most of it on the top around the face will be hidden. When I came to the end of my first spool, I didn't completely make it to the top, but I was close enough, so I did just attach that in place and then started on the next spool of ribbon. As I'm adding on the next spool, I'm making Santa's beard about 8 to 9 inches now. I'm just trying to keep everything uniform and just continue to loop the ribbon and hot glue them on the top. As I'm adding the loops, I'm just kind of eyeballing them as I go along, but if you want yours to be perfect, just measure them out as you're adding them. When I come to the end of one roll, I just continue adding on the next. And now, as I'm working my way around Santa's face, I'm making sure that the ribbon loops and the length of them on the left are now matching the ones that I'm placing on the right. And once again, not to worry if you're a little off here and there because you won't be able to tell, and the loops all kind of hang down and merge into Santa's beard. And another idea is if you can't find the ribbon, you can always cut some strips of fabric, and that would work great too. Now that my first layer of loops are attached, I'm just kind of moving around the beard here and there and adding some extra loops in to fill it out. To make Santa's mustache, I'm using a leftover piece of the ribbon and I'm folding the two ends over each other so that it measures 7 inches in length. I then used my glue gun to attach the two ends together. I'm going to add on 4 more ribbons so that I have a total of 6 loops. I added a dot of hot glue onto my first ribbon, attached the beginning of my next ribbon, and then looped it 4 more times, so I had 6 loops in total. After making my 4 loops match up, when I was adding the last 2, I did make them just a bit shorter than the first 4. Once the hot glue had cooled, I used a piece of floral wire and I just wrapped it around the center of the mustache. I added some hot glue to the top center of Santa's beard and then attached the mustache. For Santa's eyes, I'm using 2 of these small wooden circles. They came in a Dollar Tree value pack. I got them a while back. And if you don't have anything like this, you can always paint directly onto Santa's face. I painted both with my black acrylic paint, and using my white paint, I'm adding on an accent. I used the end of my paintbrush, dipped it into the white paint, and made a dot on both of the eyes. For Santa's nose, I'm using this wooden knob that I had on hand, and luckily it has a flat end. Now, if you don't have any of these, you can always use one of the ping pong balls from the Dollar Tree. To match Santa's face, I'm giving it a coat of the same coral acrylic paint. With the nose and the eyes dry, I'm attaching them to Santa's face. I placed the eyes where I wanted them, attached them with my glue gun, and then using some E6000, I attached Santa's nose onto the center of his mustache. I'm making Santa some hair by kind of bunching up 2 little clumps of polyfill. To attach them, I added some hot glue to the side of his face and onto the top of his beard, and then I just kind of pushed them into place. To add Santa's hat, I'm using this one that I already had on hand. To fill the hat up just a bit, I tucked in a large handful of polyfill. With that in place, I'm now sliding the hat over Santa's head, and I'm just kind of tucking his hair under it as I'm moving it down the sides. To hold the hat in place, I turned Santa over, added some hot glue to the back, and then added some hot glue to both of the sides. The top of my Santa's hat is not as bright white as his beard, so I'm going to use one of the Dollar Tree dust cloths. I'm going to cut it in half and then attach it to the front of his hat. On the underside of the dust cloth, I added a bead of hot glue and then I folded the 2 edges into themselves. There's quite a few flyaways once you cut the dust mop in half, so by doing this, you're helping to kind of hold them in place. Now that I'm done, and to finish up, I'm adding some hot glue to Santa's hat and placing on the fluffy white piece. I then folded over the side of Santa's hat and attached it with my glue gun. I'm giving Santa a little red mouth, and I'm using one of the glitter vase fillers from the Dollar Tree. I moved his beard away from under his nose, added on a dot of hot glue, and then attached his mouth. And now this Santa is ready for the holidays. I'm starting my gingerbread house by using 2 of the Dollar Tree wooden cutouts. The top 2 windows on my houses had fallen off, so to make it easier to paint, I just removed the other 4. Now that I'm done, I'm using my white acrylic paint to paint both of the house's roofs and the accent pieces along with the windows. To give inside of the house a warm glow, I'm painting the window area with my yellow acrylic paint. And now to give them that warm gingerbread color, I'm using some of my brown acrylic paint. I didn't paint over the trees when I was painting because I wasn't sure if I was going to end up painting them green. I didn't end up painting them, and I actually found a better option to use when I was decorating the house. With the paint on my houses dry, I'm reattaching the windows using some E6000. I just added some to the back of each and reattached them in their original place. To accent the door, I'm using some of this pretty silver trim that I had on hand. I'm outlining both of the doors and attaching the trim with my E6000. With both doors complete, I found these wooden Christmas trees in a Dollar Tree sticker pack, and I'm painting all 4 of them green. Once they're dry, I'm then adding on some white paint accents here and there to kind of mimic snow. To add on the trees, I placed some hot glue on the tree outline and then attached them into place. To make the sides and the roof for my gingerbread house, I'm using 4 of these Dollar Tree wooden planks. To make the side walls, I laid one of the gingerbread houses upside down. I then used my pencil to mark the height of the wall on the house. I did this for both pieces and then cut them to size. For my roof, I'm using 2 of the planks full size along with some of the Dollar Tree clothespins. I need 36 separate pieces, so I'm pulling 18 of them apart. Now that I have them all separated, I'm going to attach them onto the planks. To attach the pieces onto the plank, I'm using my Starbond thick glue. I love it because it sets up super quick, and if you'd like to try it out yourself, I do have it linked below in my description. Holding the plank horizontally, I'm adding on some of my glue, then placing the flat side of the clothespin down, and then alternating the ends. As you're adding them, you'll start to see a pattern appear, and there'll be a little square in the center. I ended up using that as my guide as I was attaching them. After I completed one side of the roof, I then followed the same instructions and made the second. Using the same paint as I painted the house, I then painted the roof and the 2 sides. I'm attaching the roof first, and I'm adding a line of glue up near the top edge. Then to give it a little more integrity, I'm following it up with a line of E6000. From there, I added the roof panel, and I kind of held it in place for a couple of seconds. I then added a line of hot glue onto the panel and the house. For my second piece, I followed the exact same instructions, making sure to butt the 2 pieces of the roof tightly together. I then finished up by adding another line of hot glue onto the side and in between the two top pieces. To add on the side pieces, I once again used my hot glue gun, E6000, and then attached the piece to the side. I then used my glue gun and added some hot glue to the inside. To add the second side panel, I followed the same instructions as the first. To add on the back piece of my gingerbread house, I'm following the same instructions with the hot glue and the E6000. With that complete, I'm placing the back part of the house onto the front. I'm going to be adding on some simple snow, and I'm just using some white acrylic paint. I placed a small amount on the end of a wet paintbrush, and then using a second paintbrush, I started tapping it onto my gingerbread house and the roof. It's a subtle effect, but this was my attempt at staying away from adding on the heavy snow and glitter. To accent the front and the back of my gingerbread house, I'm using 4 of these Dollar Tree candy canes. I'm also using 6 of the red and white striped straws, and these came from the Dollar Tree as well. I added on some hot glue to the gingerbread house and then attached the straws. They were a bit long for the sides, so I did cut 2 of them to fit. I'm gluing my candy canes onto the top by adding some hot glue and attaching them upside down. I'm also leaving a little space in between both of them. I painted one of the Dollar Tree candy cane wooden stickers and I attached that to the top. To make the Christmas wreath for my gingerbread house, I'm using a small piece of this Dollar Tree greenery. It's wired, so I'm twisting it around in a tight circle. Then using my scissors, I'm just kind of trimming it up until it resembles a little mini wreath. To add on the Christmas bulbs to my wreath and gingerbread house, I'm cutting some of the individual beads off of my Mardi Gras beads. With them cut, I added some hot glue to my wreath and then just attached them around it. When I was done, I then hot glued it to the front of my gingerbread house door. To add some Christmas lights to my gingerbread house, I'm using the same beads. I'm placing on random dots of hot glue and then attaching the different colors. When the roof is complete, I'm then adding them across the front and down both of the sides. To finish up my Dollar Tree gingerbread house, I'm adding a peppermint candy onto each of the windows. And now my Dollar Tree gingerbread house is complete. I hope you enjoyed making these Christmas in July DIYs with me. If you're new to my channel and you'd like to come back and hang out with me again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. Be sure to check out the playlist, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, everybody!